Movies are pretty impossible. I mean, it's a miracle that any of them get made, and even more of a miracle if any of the ones that do get made are any good. They're the most complicated thing ever. Technically, logistically impossible, and they usually cost millions of dollars. The definition of a micro-budget movie is under $1 million. So who did we think we were going ahead and trying to make a movie, to make a feature?
In order to tell you about how we made this movie, we have to go back to before I was even born. So there are these two clowns, Steven Stearns and Peter Gould. They had just come off of a world tour, they made a movie. They come back to Vermont. Steven Stearns starts the New England Youth Theater, or NEYT, and Peter Gould starts Get Thee to the Funnery Shakespeare Camp. The Governor's Institute on the Arts also started around this time. Bread and Puppet is also at the height of its attendance. These are all arts and theater programs for young folks in Vermont. They aren't restricted by income or socioeconomic status. 30 or so years later, you have generations of students, including myself, who were brought up in Vermont in and alongside all of these programs. The story of making this movie is about a group of those students who come back to Vermont and this culture that raised them to pursue their dreams and a life in art, and try to give back to that community and carry the torch for Peter and for Steven and for the countless other mentors and teachers that dedicated their lives for us and for whatever comes next.
I mean, we all have been teaching theater and primarily Shakespeare and clown for forever.
We had just had such a fun time making a funnery style show of Midsummer Night's Dream. We don't really have the kids to play the lovers and do it well. So we're just gonna do the lovers as sock puppets. And it was very funny and the audience loved it.
We decided to tour A Midsummer Night's Dream.
It's called the Suitcase Company because we can fit all of our set, props, costumes, everything we need into suitcases, load them in a car, and drive around the state. The first show that we didn't have a director. We all directed each other.
I was like, we don't have a director for this? Oh my God, we're gonna hate each other, but this is not gonna work.
And I know everyone says they want to make art for everyone, but a lot of people do things and then they have a very high price tag that make things immediately inaccessible. At least for when we were touring, our shows are around an hour long. Most of our venues are free. And a lot of those venues, you can eat pizza and drink beer and bring your whole family. We have puppets, but also it's satire comedy for adults. It's a good Pixar film, except far more shoestring and rugged.
It's not lightning in a bottle because we use puppets, so it's static electricity in the sock.
I was in the first tour in 2018. And the next tour 2019, and then 2020 came around and we couldn't tour. So I got a phone call that's we can make a movie instead. Anyway, wound up not happening.
We were like, well, we could do a movie, we could do a play. A bunch of theater actors just saying yeah, we'll just make it a movie. It's no big deal.
It's our idea of a film. Vermont Suitcase Company film is maybe we can raise $3,000 and get a camera and make a film. When we brought the Broad Brothers in, we started to think much bigger.
Sandy knew that we had gone on to, pursue filmmaking. Not only working in the film industry as lighting technicians and things like that, but also that, it's our passion in life to make movies.
Kaylin and Asia were big fans of Vermont Suitcase Company, and they've always had a desire to bring things back to Vermont.
The thing that excited us the most was making something that for us felt like Vermont Arts, the movie, to be a multi-generational funnel for art.
The great thing about doing a film is that you really have an opportunity to bring something huge to a town or the state.
It felt like one of those superhero movies, you're pulling the team back together.
There's not a lot of film training going on in Vermont. So, we needed people with a certain level of technical ability to help us pull this off.
I'm Dave. I was the camera operator. Camera operating and camera assisting is what I do. I'm a union first assistant. I met Asia and Kaylin working on movies in Syracuse.
So I was working in Syracuse in the summer of 2022. Asia was working on that show. He was gaffing his first feature. Incredibly proud of my friend. And he said something to me when I think we were about a week from being done. He walked up to me on set one day and he was like, "Hey, you got a sec?" And I thought it was going to be something dealing with, what we were doing at work. And instead he goes, "Hey, me and my brother just got a grant. We're going to shoot this feature this fall with the theater company. We have 8 days to shoot it and we want you to first AD." And I thought he was joking. My understanding of it is that it was going to be a real meet in the middle of the theater process, the film people, and the theater people.
I was really nervous about bringing the two worlds together.
I think that is one of the most important things that happened, was this multi-generational aspect of it, because every one of these pipelines that we came through operates on that idea.
Django as an intern was 16 and I was 78. The connections among all of those people, every time I think anyone had a chance to kind of reflect on it, even for a few seconds, was kind of knocked out by it. I couldn't think of another project that was equivalent. No way.
Jerry has been doing, working with me on things for my entire life, almost since I was 11. Esther, I've been teaching for many years. That range of Jerry to Esther is just really, that's like my whole life there.
The capacity of a place like Brattleboro to source an entire movie, I think, is endless. And we were so lucky for everyone who came in from the non-film side of things. That was an incredibly motivating experience for me in my film career.
Asking the question, what can we do as a small state without going outside of our local resources? Can we make viable, valid, interesting art just with us? And it seems like the answer is yes, we can. Pretty much everybody on that soundtrack either lives and works in Vermont.
I think there was a very magical shift that happened when the rest of the filming crew came in.
One of my favorite memories was actually everyone's reaction to when all of the film equipment showed up and we had to lift it up 4 flights of stairs. Like, all right, we're gonna do it. And then all of the actors were there doing it with them. And a bunch of volunteers were there doing it with them. The reaction on their faces, we're all really in this together. We loaded everything up and everyone was like, we're done. And we did it with the power off. Yeah. The power went off and we were still just like turning on headlamps, finding lights. There could not have been a more appropriate communal start to a process.
It's an adaptation of The Emperor's New Clothes, which has some inherent truths about the nature of power.
My favorite scene, which really resonated with me and sticks with me, is Marcel's story of Cousin Diggory.
This is bad. The worst part is, he's still in the dungeon. Aren't I bad?
And Marcel delivers it beautifully. And it sucks you right in and just turns your gut inside out by the time it gets to the end, because it's based on trivializing something that's terrible and horrible, in terms of the banality of evil.
To me, that's like sort of the most evil thing of all, is like how certain people have so much power. It's not even evilness it's not like a mastermind planned. It's just bureaucracy and ignorance and stuff.
I never visit him. They say he's gone mad. Why don't you laugh at my story?
We have this expectation that most of the movies that we see will have music existing in the background. Most of the time, the music is going to be crafted specifically for the film itself. I think the first cue I wrote in like an hour and a half while the film crew was actively filming on set, because they needed to know what one of the songs was going to sound like to line it up for a shot. So I happened to be home and ran up to my little home studio and like banged out a mock of it really fast and sent an email along and said, here it is, like this can be the first song for the film.
The last couple of years, as Kalen and I were throwing around the idea of eventually trying to make a feature, we had kind of figured out we didn't think we were going to be able to do it for under $200,000. You know, just for the bare minimums, the cost of equipment, the cost to pay everybody involved. There was no way we really thought we could do it for any less. The Suitcase folks talked us down even more from that because we all had such a deep history with this kind of DIY way of doing things. We had a really generous donor who got us the start on this movie for the nonprofit nature in which we were going about it. Once we had the money to start, we wrote the budget, and we realized that in order to pay people a fair living wage to be part of it, in order to feed them properly, in order to rent the camera and the lights, we could only shoot for 7 days.
Every step of the way, you see something that shouldn't really be possible.
Even smaller features would tend to go at least 20 shoot days.
Those are some of the shoots that we're used to. Honestly, a lot of feature films take 6 months to shoot.
Yeah.
So, like, to think 7 days is absolutely absurd. It definitely is a pedal to the floor as fast as humanly possible. And if there were days at the end of the day where we were flying.
Asia and Kaylin told me that they were going to be 2 takes breaks. You know, it was going to be 3rd take if we need it. And you never would have known that Wyndham or Johnny or Rosa or Dory or Shannon or any of them, like, you never would have known that these were not film people. They were incredible on camera. They were incredible on set. The mentionable things, we shot a 16-page day, a 22-page day, followed by a 26-page day. This is unheard of. You told Scorsese or Spielberg you were going to have them shoot over 4 pages, you'd be looking for a job the next day. Like, it doesn't happen, and we did it.
That's what, you know, the Vermont Suitcase Company, all those directors who have taught me for my entire life, but that's what I know from them, is we're gonna pull it off one way or another, so we just gotta do it.
What are you doing here? You forgot your I gotta fix those sleeves. You have no business being alone in the wood.
As a costume designer, I had connections with all of these artists, and I was able to sort of reach out to the bigger community that had been sort of formed over the past 20 years to participate in this film. So for instance, the city that you see in the background was probably 15 different local artists coming over to our apartment and making these houses. We called it Takes a Village to Make a Village. The tech people that came in from out of town, people just housed them. Lots of people were contributing food, showing up with casseroles, and you'll see in the credits, it's just a long, long list of participation. We actually had the entire 4th floor of the American building. I don't know how we did it, but we ended up with like 6 studios. Some people lent them to us, some people rented them to us very cheaply. So we just had a place for everything. And that was all because of the generosity of people on our floor, of people in the building, and of the American building landlord who was really accommodating for us.
To be able to have this connection back to my roots in my hometown and feel like you're doing something to impact your community, I think it's really rare.
You can imagine working in the industry at a professional level and kind of leaving all that hick stuff behind. That would be a pretty common scenario. But those roots apparently run deep. So we must have done something right.
Film can be very rigid, and there's a reason for that. When you're on a schedule and you're trying to release a product that a lot of people have millions of dollars in and they want it done their way, but we got to do something that was collaborative and really kind of creating art, not just making a product. It's truly the best project I've ever worked on in my entire life so far.
When we were at the New England Youth Theater, it never felt like we were making youth theater. We felt like we were the junior level of Broadway. Whether or not that's true or not is irrelevant, I think. It goes back to some of the things that Stephen would always say, which was, 100 doors of opportunity.
Leap and the net will appear. And this was a widening of that net.
I have to make this the most important project I've ever done. The way that this thing has come together has felt like such confirmation that every time I chose to go work for 2 weeks at Governor's Institute instead of keeping that summer job that paid me more money, every time I build up my schedule more than I should have with a play or something creative, the fact that the people I met in all of those decisions are coming together now, that was everything for me. You have those moments in your life, I think, where you're like, you start to be like, I don't know, maybe if I had done things differently, I'd be in a different place. Things would be easier. I'd have more money. I'd have whatever. And then something like this happens. You're like, no, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to have gone on this journey. I'm supposed to have truly followed my heart. There's a million different ways I could have tried to make movies, but I'm so happy that this is the way it happened.
It wasn't really even in my consciousness the days going into shooting that it would be a creatively fulfilling process. I was just so worried about the mechanics behind getting it done. I mean, it's crazy. Even thinking back, I'm like, what was I thinking? I think the only reason that we could was because of this weird kind of belief that we got from Peter and Stephen that with enough energy and willpower and passion that we could make something like this.